Hey, thank you so much for having me. Thanks to the editors and LPR for publishing this one. It's kind of fun. This turned into a bigger thing than I had intended. So this may be the start of a novel. Who knows? We'll see what ends up happening. But I'm happy to have the chance to share the space and read with you today. So this is called Into the Gully. Michael Hamlinson was lying on his father's couch when his father, Bud Hamlinson, began to wave a metal detector over his head like a flying saucer. I don't think it works, Bud said. I don't have any metal in my head, Michael said, pushing away the contraption and sitting up, though it did feel like his skull was made of tinfoil and someone was chewing it, such was his hangover. Didn't you have a lot of cavities as a kid? I'm sure I remember that. Michael didn't say anything. His father wasn't remembering Michael's cavities. For all his lack of self-care, he'd never had one, and he wondered if his father had begun creating a life for John again, if he would mix up Michael's life with that tiny ghost. Bud moved the metal detector over an old brassy lamp with a green glass shade, and it went off. Get up, his father said. Brush your teeth or at least wash your face. There's clean washcloths in the bathroom. But get up, we're going into the gully. The last thing Michael wanted to do was go treasure hunting with his father, but he knew there would be no peace until he went. His father likely couldn't make it down the slope without him. Plus, when Michael asked to crash at his place, neither of them thought that first night would turn into 2 years on his couch. As with so many times previous, Michael owed him. He got up, microwaved a cup of oily day-old coffee, and when his father wasn't looking, poured a healthy slug of Kentucky Deluxe from a plastic bottle he thought Michael didn't know about. Michael downed it, and everything gentled. 35 and sneaking Papa's whiskey, he thought, good for you. He poured another into a dented thermos and got his father one too, sans whiskey, who was still testing the metal detector on random items in his living room. Michael held out his father's thermos, but Bud shook his head. Need both hands for this. Gary told me some Russian guys found a whole stockpile of automatic rifles buried in a random field. Perfect condition. You see all the wild folk come in and out of these apartments? Some of them definitely had stuff worth burying out there. Gary owned the pawn shop in a strip mall across the street from the apartments, the only pawn shop in Hollow Hill, Colorado. Bud hated him, called him a vile serpent most days, and maybe because of his hate, believed everything the man said. They lived on the second floor, and it took his father a while to make it down the stairs. Before Bud reached the bottom, Michael drained his own thermos, set it on the bottom concrete step to pick up on the way back, and started in on Bud's coffee. He wished he had thought to spike this one as well, but you never know which things you intend to give to someone else will remain with you instead. Across the asphalt, marked with faded yellow paint designating assigned parking spaces, and past the gray communal mailbox area, development stopped, and there, an accessible wilderness. The gully, filled with dry, twiggy trees and pokey underbrush, and wrappers and bottles blown in or tossed in from the complex. The sun threatened to rise, angry and red, and the withering bramble of the gully caught that color and radiated a growing menace. Bud shuffled toward the gully, unaware of the sky. Michael had to help him climb down in, but once they were in, surrounded by dead sticks and sloping dirt and half-buried stones, bits of weathered paper skewered on branches like tiny flames, only then did he shrug Michael off. He hobbled ahead, white hair dyed by the coming sun. If Michael looked just right, squinted the right amount, he couldn't distinguish his father from the gully. And for the sparest of moments, he worried he might lose him to the trees. Michael wondered what Bud hoped to find. Maybe he wanted to upstage the Russian guys in Gary's story. Though Michael guessed Gary had made it all up to trick Bud into buying the metal detector in the first place, he imagined Gary sitting, drinking overly sugared coffee, without whiskey surely, and snickering to himself, imagining this exact scenario. And even that was better than the saddest and most feasible reality. Gary probably didn't think about Bud at all. The steady beeping of the metal detector was near enough that Michael knew his father was close, even if he couldn't see him. Michael's stomach was still too messed up to smoke, but he wanted to try anyway. Bud quit years ago, though he began in secret after John. Michael never let on that he knew. He found his cigarettes quickly, but couldn't find a lighter. He kept a book of matches for just this type of occasion and a handful of others. He turned around and around, trying to find a shelter against a light breeze. The fiery hue of the gully only deepened, and slowly spinning in the middle of all that red was dislocating. Michael finally stopped, not when the breeze relented, but when he spotted a bird watching him. It was bright orange red and unmoving, or maybe it was white like his father's hair, only not right at this moment, not in the red light of the coming sun. It didn't peck at anything, it just stared like it knew him. The bird sat and stared on a wavering branch which looked too thin to hold its meager weight. As Michael stared back, the branch where it balanced took on the color of the sunrise, but then intensified beyond it, undulating with vivid hues so it appeared to glow from within, and the red of the bird matched the red of the branch, which matched the red of the sun, which matched the red of a bitten lip, which matched the red of his match tip. And then the bird and the branch became too bright, indistinguishable from one another, a blending of flesh and live wood, feather and bark, and they kept on brightening. Behind Michael, around the bend, somewhere, his father's metal detector bleeped wildly. Michael heard something, what he assumed to be his father, drop into the dirt, followed by the sound of a mad dash scrabbling. He turned away from the bird and the branch to look for him. "Michael," Bud yelled, "you have to see what I found. Gary will never believe it." When Michael looked back, the bird was gone, the branch a drab gray. He touched the branch. It was cool. No unseen forces at work, just a branch. He put his unlit cigarette away. The sun had cracked the horizon, but a low bank of clouds slid in between, and the temperature immediately dropped. "Come on, come help me. I can't get it out of the ground." Michael didn't say anything. He didn't possess any words just then, though he knew they existed just out of reach. He felt the urge to leave, not just the gully, not the apartment complex, but Hollow Hill, the country. Somehow he knew, though, that no matter where he went, how far he went, it wouldn't be enough. He thought about all this, but still went to help his father and found him on all fours in the dirt facing away. "Can you believe it?" Bud asked. Michael hugged himself against the morning chill and waited for his father to show him what he had found.